You're listening to Running the Voodoo Down. I'm Micah Dubroy. This is the very first incarnation of what we're calling Voodoo Riffs. Each full episode of Running the Voodoo Down centers on a theme or experience, or maybe an exceptional person or event, but sometimes a story can fall through the cracks. It's too short, it doesn't quite line up with the specific topic we're working on, it doesn't fit in the arc of the episode, or maybe it's nothing more than a great conversation with an interesting musician. The point is that an interview can be just that and still be really valuable. So, Voodoo Riffs are here to fill that void, let an idea be just what it wants to be, and give us all a little more insight into a musical world without boundaries. Or there'll just be some fun stories, so please stick around.
Hello, 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 hello.
You are listening to Running the Voodoo Down on BAMM.FM.
Thank you for listening. This show often focuses on broadly popular music in the sense that it's directed at a general audience. But I think it's worth considering that the musicians who make what many might consider to be more esoteric or experimental or avant-garde music, these composers are always really passionate about their work. They care in a way that I've seen very few people care about anything. And so even if you don't know what to make of the music, I think that fact alone makes it worthwhile to listen to what they have to say. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Wendy Reid, a composer and professor at Mills College in Oakland, who, among other things, writes and performs with an African gray parrot named Lulu. African gray parrots are generally considered to be one of the most intelligent, if not the most intelligent birds in the world. They can live over 50 years, and if taught to speak, they can actually carry out conversations with humans. And so the musical opportunities are intriguing, to say the least. I mean, why, to a certain extent, would you want to work with a parrot? What do you get out of it? How do you work with a parrot? I mean, at a certain point, they must be musical, right? They can sing, they can mimic, they can speak. Hell, if you think about it, I mean, why hasn't anyone done this before? So, today, Running the Voodoo Down is for the birds.
Throughout my life, I've been listening to birds, and if you ever really listen to their songs, they're just so varied and so amazing and so intricate. And owning this bird, especially Lulu, in the morning she starts out with these little sounds and she's trying to interact with me, and they get more and more complex. And she has just an imagination that, you know, is really as great as any human great improviser. And I guess what's interesting is people think that birds are mimics, and that's just, you know, one aspect of their ability. They are just totally amazing in how they create these little complex groups of timbres as well as songs. It's not just simple, you know, beautiful little bird songs. They're just it's a complexity of all different kinds of sounds, beautiful sounds, strange sounds, and I just think they're totally amazing, and they've never really been explored, which I think is interesting in terms of a concert situation. Whereas you can see why, because they have a life of their own, they have a mind of their own. If you start training them, then it won't be the same thing. But in a context where where Lulu lives in my house, I'm hearing this all day long. And so I'm hearing things that she, as a musician responding to a human musician, probably creates different things than obviously a bird outside. And she just comes up with pretty amazing things. If I ever get this in a situation where she'll be comfortable in a concert situation, it will be really great. Sometimes she is, I should say. It's not a complete, you know, put a tightness at the performance. But I think, you know, maybe like if I did some YouTube performances, people could see just the freedom that she develops her music with.
That sense of freedom seems to really permeate Wendy's music, and I wanted to ask her how that translates practically into working with Lulu.
Yeah, well, I guess with all creatures, it's nice when you get their natural state. And if I trained her to respond with a certain sound or whatever, it wouldn't be a musical act anymore. And it's not, and I even don't like the idea of act, the word. It just seems, when I play music, I try to have it come from myself and not because I'm on stage. And so I like the birds to be the same way, and as a result, you have to be willing to accept no sound from the birds sometimes in a performance, because that's what they feel, you know. And then if you train them to do something, to me it's a totally different experience. And I respect people who, you know, do intelligence tests on animals and try to get them to do all sorts of things that maybe expose their intelligence. That's, you know, one thing. But when I'm dealing with music, I would like their unfettered, you know, approach to music. I don't like the humans telling them what to do, because then it just loses the point. Birds have been making sounds throughout their lives. I think if anybody has to tell who what to do, it's the birds should be telling us.
So I think the question at this point then is, what are we actually learning from the birds? If they're singing from a state of nature, literally, how are they creating? How are they improvising? What's happening here? This might get technical for a second, but bear with us.
I mean, you know, there's all different kinds of improvisation. Many improvisational performers have their licks that they've memorized and worked it out. And so sometimes when they're taking their solo, it's not quite as free as you wish they were. And if you heard them a number of times and you realize, oh, I've heard this one before. So, and birds are probably the same way. They have their certain, you know, dictionary of what they're going to pick from, you know, the bird dictionary of what works here. So none of us are completely, you know, just improvising on the spot. But I think birds probably are a little more, since they're not performing in a sense for people or anything else, they're just living their lives. There's a certain purity probably, I hate to use that word, but just a more natural aspect, because it's not for performance. In a way it is, because sometimes they're performing for another bird, you know, they have all these other reasons, but it's not as artificial as the human performance. You know, we get on stage and people wait and play for them. So I've written one piece where I have had the musicians play from a score, and slowly the score turns into a very strict score that turns into spatial notation, and various stages become freer and freer, and by the end they're supposed to sound more bird-like, and the birds are playing along with them, and so theoretically in the end they've kind of merged. But birds have you know, complex rhythms, basically, especially in modern music, there's very complex rhythms notated, like Boulez, for example, does very amazing notations. And some of his pieces come out very bird-like. And these animals are doing it very naturally. And actually with spatial notation with composers frees them up to do that too. But I would say people think it's almost arrhythmical because they're free and they just do anything they want to do. Well, it can either be a very complex rhythms, or you can call it arrhythmical. And same with the harmonies. Sometimes there's very microtonal, and it's hard to get away from harmony. But I would call it basically, many of the time, atonal music, arrhythmic music, but it's very complex of both of those.
So whether or not you can appreciate that from a technical standpoint, or if it just sounds complicated and unique, I think the takeaway here is that there's a whole rich world of music that's existed far longer than humans have been making any kind of music. And while we've all appreciated it aesthetically, we're only just beginning to really delve into what's happening. And that's exciting. And I wanted to ask Wendy if this was tied into any maybe spiritual connection with animals. There's clearly a lot of love there.
Oh, well, I don't know what word is best to describe it. I just think of animals as being very special beings in our universe, and I think for the most part humans have put them at a lower level than themselves. And I think if anything, they're at a higher level, and that they make humans better people. And so if anybody who's ever had an animal has gotten very close to it can, I think, understand that. But I think a lot of people just have never allowed themselves to get that close with animals. So
I think that's a good thought to end on. I wanted to wrap the episode by actually speaking with Lulu, but she wasn't really interested in talking to me. I think she was a little rattled by my presence and a few other things that were happening during the interview. But you've been hearing her the entire time. The music that's been playing underneath the whole interview is a piece called Tree Piece 55, Lulu Variations, by Wendy Reid. And if you're interested in Wendy or Lulu or their music, you can check it out at treepieces.net. I want to thank Wendy for speaking with me and Lulu for tolerating my presence, and all of you for listening. I really appreciate your time, and we want as much feedback as we can get about the podcast, of what you want to hear, of what you like, of what you don't like. So please, comment, rate, send us whatever thoughts you have. We really appreciate it. I'm Micah Dubroy, and this has been Running the Voodoo Down on BAMM.FM.